Hello, my name is Barbara Defazzio and this is Amy Inatelli, and we are from Circle of Friends Services. And we are here today to show you our favorite categories of books that we use for doing bibliotherapy for young children. Circle of Friends Services provides services for children and families in the child welfare system, for children and families who've experienced a great deal of trauma. And we have found over the years that very young children relate very well to things that they see in books. So we're going to show you 10 different categories of books that we have found to be quite effective in working with this population. The first book I'm going to show you, and it's really the only book I have in this category, is Your Fantastic Elastic Brain. What we have found with young children is that they respond very well if we show them what parts of their brain affect different parts of their behavior. And this is a funny book. It's written in cartoon style. It helps kids to understand what parts of their brain are firing up when they can't sit still, when they can't control themselves. It helps them to understand a lot about their behavior. So Your Fantastic Elastic Brain has been a very good tool for us to use. And along with that tool, we have bought a little child-sized brain model that we use with children to show them this is the part of your brain that is helping you to think. This is the part of your brain that might be getting you upset and causing you to blow up. So we found that these two tools together have been very helpful in helping kids learn how to self-regulate. And for kids in trauma, that's a very important thing. The second category I'm going to talk to you about are books that we use for children who've experienced a great deal of trauma. And this is a book for a very young child. And all of the books that we're showing you here are not expensive. They usually range anywhere from $5 to $15 depending on the size of the book. This little book, A Terrible Thing Happened, averages about $7. You can get it on Amazon. But it talks about a little animal that has a terrible thing happen to him. And we find that children can relate to animals in books a little bit better sometimes than they can to books about children. So A Terrible Thing Happened is a very good book for helping children talk about what's happened to them. And Brave Bart actually was one of the earliest books that was written for traumatized and grieving children. And Brave Bart is a little cat that has something terrible happen to him, and he goes through all of the symptoms of trauma until helpful Hannah, his therapist, comes along and writes trauma in the litter box and helps Bart. So this is a very early book, but it is really one of the most effective. The third category, somewhat similar to that I'm going to talk to you about, is sexual trauma. And sexual trauma is a very difficult thing to get children to talk about. But Some Secrets Hurt is about a little girl who keeps a secret, and we find that children do relate to this book and they're able to talk about why she keeps the secret, even if they aren't able yet to tell us what secrets they're keeping. Again, this is about $7 on Amazon. Some Secrets Hurt. It's a very, very good tool. Now, what about boys? It Happens to Boys Too is a very old book. This book was written in the 1980s, and unlike all these other ones, it is not cheap, but it is a very, very helpful tool for little boys. When you start to look at this, you're going to find that there are very, very few books for children, little boys, that have been molested. So we bought this on Amazon. At the point that we bought it, it cost $50, and we had it bound by Office Depot because it's out of print. But you will find that boys will relate to this very strongly. They will tell you what's happened to them when they haven't done it before. So It Happens to Boys Too is well worth the money. Amy?
Our next category is about foster care. The first book is The Star, and it gives kids the opportunity to see that even though foster care is a very unique experience, they're not the only ones that are going through it and what some of the challenges are. This is for very young children and some of the feelings that they might be experiencing. Maybe Days is a very popular book in this section. This can be for young and older children, and again, just talks about some of the challenges and feelings that they are having by being in foster care and answers some of the questions that they might be having.
At one point, this was free on the Department of Children and Families website. You could order however many copies. When they first wrote this book, that's where you could get it. Now I think we might have bought this on Amazon, but again, maybe $6, $7.
Yeah, it's inexpensive and well worth it. Okay, for treating children in child welfare, this is one of the basics to have. The next category is about separation and loss, which a lot of children and families in child welfare experience. This first one is called The Kissing Hand. And again, it's about animals, which is a lot safer experience for their young children. Gives them that therapeutic distance that they need. And this is about a little raccoon who misses his mom, but he gets to feel connected by her by she kisses his hand, and he gets to remember that. And the next one in that same category of separation and loss is The Invisible String. And this one is about people, and it's about being connected by a string even when you're not with that person. So that's a very similar experience for children in foster care or who are separated from their biological parents.
And one of the things that we have found with the invisible string is that therapists have a really hard time sitting with children in their pain when they're missing their parents or their caretakers. So this provides something that the therapist can actually do with the child to make them feel connected to a parent that's obviously not there anymore.
Right. Our next category really goes along with that early brain stuff that we were talking about, and this is about self-regulation. I've had a lot of success with this one. This is called Goodnight Yoga, and it's a story really just gives the kids some basic yoga poses that are fun and easy to do for kids, and gives a relaxation exercise on each page and at the end that they can do. All the kids that I've used this with have really enjoyed it because they get to get up and move around, and after it's over, we are able to do a lot better work. And I get lots of requests from kids to do it again. So. The next one in this category is called Angry Octopus, which it's about anger and self-regulating that anger, but it's really a relaxation book. And throughout the story, it takes you through a whole relaxation exercise that is helpful for children. And the last one in this category for self-regulation is for very young children, called Cool Down and Work Through Anger. And this would be for your preschool age children. Okay. Thank you.
I think I'm going to do this one next because it does go along with these. We don't have as many things for older kids because we don't have as many older kids in therapy, but there are several workbooks that you can get. This is one of them, Self-Esteem Note Workbook for teens, and it has a series of reproducible worksheets in here and activities for teens to use to help build up their self-esteem. Anybody who works with teenagers know you have to go in with more than a smile and a conversation because they don't want to talk to you sometimes. So I find for our therapists working with the older teens, this is a good tool. They have the worksheets. The kids like to use the worksheets, so that is a helpful tool. We have the CPT Skills Workbook, again, similar to the Self-Esteem Workbook. It's going to give you some reproducible worksheets. It's going to give you some things that you can do with kids. And this is very helpful for helping the older kids self-regulate. There's also a series of books, and I have two of them here to show you. what to do when your temper flares, and what to do when you worry too much. And there are 2 or 3 of these in this series that just help older kids with problems that all kids have. All kids have tempers, all kids get bullied, all kids worry about things. So this is a very nice series. And if you Google what to do if, you're going to get on Amazon, all of them will come up together. What to do when your temper flares, what to do when you worry too much. There's a whole series of them, and the kids seem to like them too.
What I like about this series is that this can be done over multiple sessions. They're done in chapters with exercises for each chapter, but it's written in language that maybe even a 10-year-old could do. So
yeah, it's a very, very good, useful tools. The one that we always have a hard time tackling is death. And sadly for our kids in the child welfare system, their parents die, their siblings die. These kids see a lot more death than kids in normal functioning households. For younger kids, When Dinosaurs Die is a really good tool, because When Dinosaurs Die stays with the dinosaur family, but it goes through all kinds of death. And it goes through death by suicide, drug overdose, all of the things that our kids are more likely to see than just having your grandparent grow old and die. So if you really have to help a very young child dealing with death, When Dinosaurs Die is a very good one to have. For older kids, I have a particular favorite, and it is called Tear Soup. This also comes with a DVD, which is beautifully produced, that talks about someone who's suffered a terrible loss. It's about an older woman who suffers a terrible loss, and she makes tear soup. And as she makes the tear soup, she goes through all of the grieving processes that we all go through with death. I've used this with older kids. I've used the DVD with older kids, and they really can understand the metaphor of the tear soup. This is a little more expensive, but death is a tough thing, and these two are very good tools for helping our kids deal with death. Amy?
Our next category is self-esteem. This book is called The Paper Bag Princess, and she gets to experience saving herself and saving the prince, and she did it all by herself. So this is a very good empowerment book. The next one is called The Adventures of Sandy and Clammy, which was actually written by a therapist friend of mine who is in the Orlando area. And this is a really good book about feeling good about yourself and experiencing friendship as well as loss. Our next category is for preschoolers. Preschoolers have maybe a hard time paying attention, so these are written especially for them. So they're a lot smaller. These are some board books, and this is an entire series of very specific behaviors that you might want to tackle with a preschooler. So this is Feet Are Not for Kicking. Voices Are Not for Yelling. Tails Are Not for Pulling. Words Are Not for Hurting. And lastly, hands are not for hitting. And what I would suggest in using these is that you pair it with an activity that goes along with the theme of that book.
But our particular favorite is Diapers Are Not Forever.
Yes,
We don't have Diapers Are Not Forever, but that is our favorite.
Yeah, there are more to this series. Diapers Are Not Forever, and Germs Are Not for Sharing. So, they're all reasonably priced on Amazon, so feel free to get the ones that you need.
And if you pull up Words Are Not for Hurting or Feet Are Not for Kicking, you'll get them all, because that is a little trick that Amazon has that helps us. Okay, our last category that we're going to talk to you about today is adoption. And adoption is a difficult thing to explain, sometimes to the adoptive parents, but also to the adoptive children. We don't have a lot of books in this category because as of the filming of this, our therapists have taken most of them out and used them, but we do have a series of them. But Yes, I'm Adopted is a nice little book that explains to very young children why they're adopted, what happened to them, how they got here, how their life is a little bit different maybe than the child who sits next to them in kindergarten. So it's a very positive book, and you're going to find that most of the books in these series about adoption are very positive. The family book isn't strictly about adoption. However, the family book does talk about alternative types of families because a lot of our kids end up in alternative types of families. So it talks about adoptive families, kids who live with their aunts and uncles, kids who live with two moms, kids who live with two dads. So we have a whole series of different kinds of alternative living situations, and this book pretty much talks about a lot of them. So those are the 10 categories that we're finding useful right now. Amy is going to talk a little bit about one of the techniques that we use. I will say one thing about the books that we buy. You might want to check the copyright date on some of the books that you're finding on Amazon, and if the book was made any place between 1982 and 1989-90, you might just want to look at it a little, because we do find that that was a period of time when we were kind of coming off the sexual revolution and the women's movement, and we were doing all kinds of things to teach our children about sex that some parents might be a little uncomfortable with today. It was a very upfront period, and if you look at some of those books, you'll see what I mean. They're very funny. There's nothing harmful in them, but it was just a slightly different time and kind of a reactionary period. So one of them is called Where Do I Come From? Mm-hmm. And I forget the other one that
A touching book.
A touching book.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with them. It's just very reflective of the time in which we were trying to teach children how to protect themselves and protect sexual boundaries. So that's just something that I would say be careful about. And you're going to talk a little bit about the sticker technique.
Techniques, yes. And the first thing I want to say about doing bibliotherapy is that I think one of the challenges that therapists sometimes find with reading to children is that they might not pay attention, or they seemingly not pay attention, or might not be insightful about the material. And I just want to let everyone know that it is okay to go where the kid is at. So if they're not able to pay attention and you only get a couple of pages in, that's okay. If they're having some difficulty, they can't listen, and they want to talk a lot, maybe them making up a story to the pictures that they see is what is needed. I think the kids will guide you on where they're at and what they need. Many kids that I've worked with, if we read a particular book, they might even ask for it again, and they get something out of it the second, third, maybe even fourth times. But there is a technique that was taught to me by another therapist, and I found it to be extremely effective in getting kids to pay attention and get some insight out of these books. And that is called the sticker technique, and I use just a small pad of Post-it notes. And I instruct the child at the very beginning. I say, okay, well, we're going to read this book, and I hand them the sticky notes. And I say, it is your job to put a sticky note on any page that you found important, or one that you really liked, or maybe one that you want to talk about at the end. And that kid has a job to do, and they get excited about it. Even if the kids put a sticky note on every page, again, that's okay, because it gave them something to pay attention to, and they were hanging on every word I was saying throughout this book. So a good technique to increase attention. And even if they are more discriminatory about which ones they put a sticky note on, then at the end of the book, you can process with them why that was important to them. What was it about this page or this message that was important to them or that they related to?
So we've given you 10 different categories of book. We've tried to give you our favorites, ones that we have seen children really respond to. Some Secrets Hurt is a book that we have read to children and they have disclosed their own sexual abuse right on the spot. I know it has happened with this one because I have experienced it with reading to little boys and them thinking, oh, this happened to me and nobody's ever asked me about this. So books are very powerful. They're very powerful for little kids. As Amy said, I think sometimes we're afraid to use them because we think the kids aren't paying attention, but they are paying attention. They're getting the level of information that they can handle. So we wanted to bring this to you today because every time we do a training, we have therapists saying, what book? Which ones do you use? What are the titles? How do you use them? So that's why we brought this to you today, and we hope that you have found it useful, and we hope that you will go out and begin to develop your own biblio library. Again, it is not expensive. Most of these books are readily available on Amazon, 0 to 3 Academy, the Trauma Academy, and we're going to put up a list of resources at the end of this video. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you.